Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is C Chitsiga-Magasela. I'm a life sciences lead educator in the Sarah Bartman district, and this afternoon I'm going to be taking you through the section of the human eye, but particularly looking at eye defects and their treatment. Of course, this is a section of work that is part and parcel of responding to the environment, which started when you looked at the human nervous system, and it's going to end when you look at the ear as well as the defects that are associated with the ear. Before we begin, we know that whatever work we need to do, we've got to be guided by some sort of document, and our exam guideline is that particular document which assists us in what we teach and learn. So we need to examine and say, what do the exam guidelines say when it comes to this particular topic? It is part of your paper 1 section of work, which will carry 40 marks. And when you look at the human eye, you have already looked at the structure of the human eye in the previous lessons. You also looked at accommodation and pupillary mechanisms just yesterday. And today we are particularly interested in looking at the nature and the treatment of what we term visual defects. And you need to pay particular attention to the diagrams that are going to be presented to you and be able, if given a diagram, to say, well, what condition is it based on the setup that will be there in that particular diagram. And the 4 eye defects that we're going to be looking at are short-sightedness, also known as myopia, long-sightedness, hypermetropia, astigmatism, and cataracts. As we're covering this section, and you know that we have those 4 eye defects that we're going to be covering. If you are presented with a question, you need to be able to do the following. You need to be able to describe the effect. What is it? How do we know that that person has got this particular visual defect? What causes that particular eye defect? And what is the effect of having that particular eye defect on how you view images? And lastly, how are we able to treat this eye defect? And most of the eye defects that we're going to look at do have remedies in which we can correct them. Just a quick recap. As we know that in the previous 2 lessons, you looked at the different parts of the eye as well as their functions, and then you looked at the processes of accommodation as well as pupillary mechanism. So before we proceed with this particular section on eye defects, because your eye defects, we're going to look at 3 major parts that are going to be affected in terms of how light penetrates in and how the image is formed. But we just need to make sure that we can recall the different parts of the eye as well as their particular function. So we're going to have a quick run through of those different parts of the eye, such as the ciliary fibers. Remember, what do the ciliary fibers do? The ciliary fibers are holding the lens in place, and they're there, as we saw yesterday, they play a role in the process of accommodation. We have the iris. The iris controls the amount of light that is entering the eye. We have the cornea, which we're going to talk about a lot in this particular section, and we say that the cornea allows light to penetrate into the eye, and it is also responsible for the internal inflection of the curvature of your light rays. We've got the lens. The lens, as we saw yesterday with accommodation, it's going to change its shape to allow for light to pass through. The vitreous humor is a liquid that is there that is also responsible for some amount of refraction of the light. Then the fovea is a part that contains your cones in the eye, and that part there, it provides the clearest image within the eye. The aqueous humor also plays a role in the refraction of light. The retina, which we're going to mention again quite a lot, that is where absorption of light rays happens and it prevents reflection, but this is also where you get the image being formed. The disc, you'll probably call it as the blind spot within some of our textbooks. It's not sensitive to light, but what we find there, this way blood vessels and nerves join the optic nerve. And then of course we've got the sclera, which protects the internal parts of the eye as well as maintaining the shape of the eyeball. And then lastly the optic nerve, which then connects to the cerebrum, where it's going to understand what type of image we have, the image that's going to be formed, and completes what we then view as an image. So those are the parts of the eye and their functions, as you have already covered. But we are saying, well, let's look at the pathway of light through the eyeball. And when you look at the pathway of light through the eyeball, we're going to be more concerned about an object and light rays coming in through the cornea and how the lens is going to change its shape to project that image on the retina. So if for some reason there's a disturbance at the cornea or at the lens, it's going to affect how the image is going to fall and be formed at the retina. Once more, we also need to recap our formation of an image, because yes, you can talk of an eye defect, but in order for you to understand what this eye defect is, it is based on the ability of the eye to either form a clear image or its inability to form a clear image. So how does an image form? If you remember from the previous lesson, we said, well, here's an example that we're using. There's our cyclist, and what is going to happen? We can see that that is a cyclist, but how does your eye view that cyclist? So the light rays enter the eye, and as they enter the eye, how are they entering the eye? Via the cornea as well as the lens. The light rays enter the eye, and as they enter the eye, they are refracted, meaning that they are bent by the cornea and the lens. And the light rays travel and they will go and fall on the retina. And it is at the retina that an image is going to be formed. However, that image that is formed at the retina is going to be an upside down image. And there's the optic nerve. If you follow on this diagram, there's the optic nerve which is next to the retina, and the optic nerve picks up that upside down image and sends the message to the brain. Which part of the brain? The cerebrum. And what does the cerebrum do? The cerebrum will interpret that that's an image, whatever the image is, and it will turn so that it understands or it interprets that image the right way up. And that is how we're able to view an image. So let's proceed and look at the eye defects that we are interested in today. The first eye defect that we're looking at is short-sightedness or myopia. When we talk about someone being short-sighted, when it comes to a visual defect, what does it actually mean? It means that that person has got the ability to see objects close by very well, very clearly. However, they are unable to see objects that are far away. These objects that are at a distance are going to appear blurry. When you looked at accommodation yesterday, we said, well, when it comes to the eye, we talk about near vision and far vision. Anything that's classified as near vision is within 6 meters, and anything 6 meters and above is classified as being distant vision. So when you talk about short-sightedness, it means that you are able to see anything within the 6 meters of your eyes. However, anything further than 6 meters becomes blurry. You struggle to see it. And the reasons for this could be that your eyeball could be longer than normal. If you follow the blue arrow, the eyeball could be longer than normal, or your cornea is going to be curved, but it's going to be bulging out. When something bulges out, it comes out, it stands out, it pushes out. Or you have the inability of the lens to become flat. But of course, the inability of your lens to become flat is associated with the structure of the bulging of your cornea. These are the three reasons which may cause short-sightedness. So because you have those three setups happening in the eye, either the eyeball is longer than normal, or the curvature of your cornea is too bulging, which leads to the inability of the lens becoming flat, what does that do to the formation of the image, which is what we need to look at. Remember, we spoke about the consequences of being short-sighted. So because those three cannot happen, or they exist within your eye, this is what's going to happen. Ideally, if we look at the diagram at the top, your light rays are coming in, that go in past the cornea, the lens, they're refracted, and they go and they fall on the retina, which is the point of focus, and an image is formed. A clear image is formed. However, when you have those three existing conditions, which is the diagram at the bottom, your light rays come in, they go past the cornea, which could be too bulged, and it will affect the lens. It won't be able to become too flat, or, as we said, the eyeball is too long, and therefore the light rays will only travel and they will fall before the retina. So images, your point of focus where the clear images are going to form for those distant objects is going to be before the retina. So we say that the best part or the best image is clearly focused and it falls in front of the retina. Therefore, for all your distant objects, you cannot see them clearly because that is where the image is going to be formed, in front of your retina. So how then do we treat short-sightedness if one suffers from short-sightedness? Those of you who know me know that I wear spectacles and my vision is short-sighted. So what does that mean? My glasses, my spectacles, they have a concave lens. So if you look here, a concave, it is the one that bends inwards. So the light rays are coming and the lens that is used bends inwards. The reason for this is that we're trying to diverge the light rays. Diverge means what? We're going to separate the light rays. So as the light rays come in, they're separated so that they can cover distance and they come and project, or they form at the retina. So to correct short-sightedness, we use concave lens, which will distribute the light rays, which will divert, which will separate the light rays before they enter the eye. A diagram that we have here, it shows you the dark line that is before your vision is corrected. So this is a person suffering from myopia. The image forms before the retina. However, if you look at the red line, the moment we have your concave lens, the light rays come in and they are caused to spread out. They're separated as they enter the eye, and then they're able to come back again and allow that image to be formed on the retina. And when you're given a question, maybe your examiner might even say, well, given this two diagram, identify the type of eye condition that is there. So what are you looking at? When you have myopia, the light rays, the top diagram, the light rays come in, they enter the eye, and the image is formed before the retina. To correct this, what are we going to use? We're going to use the concave lens. It curves in there, and it allows the light rays to come, and they're going to be split, separated before they enter the eye, and then allow for the image to then go and form at the retina. Ideally, if you're not going to get concave lens, you may go for laser surgery, and in most cases your laser surgery is there to correct the curvature of the cornea. That is, if the problem is as a result of the uneven curvature of the cornea. The second eye defect is long-sightedness or hypermetropia. When we talk about long-sightedness, it means that it is the ability to see objects at a distance clearly, but you cannot see objects that are close by. So anything that is further than 6 meters, you do not have a problem. You can see that very well. But if you're given something that's within 6 meters, you will struggle to see that particular object. Sometimes I know that as people get older, sometimes you've given your parents, your grandparents, and the newspaper to read, and you see them. The newspaper should be in front of them. That's close vision. But what you see them doing is they pull back and push the newspaper a bit away from them until they get that vision. That is a sign possibly of long-sightedness. You're able to see objects at a distance, but you cannot see those that are close by. Once again, what could be the reason for this? Could be because your eyeball is shorter than normal. So we look there, our eyeball is shorter than normal, which is going to affect, of course, the refractive power, or the cornea is too flat. And if our cornea is too flat, it means that it is also going to lead in the inability of the lens to be more convex. Right, that's another term we're introducing. Convex. What does it mean? Convex means to bend out. So your lens is bending out, it's protruding outwards. So if you are long-sighted, it means that your lens cannot bend outwards. That's what we mean by the inability for it to become more convex. So, your lens is weak. So what causes long-sightedness? The eyeball is shorter, the cornea is too flat, or your lens has the inability to become more convex. It is too weak. If those three setups are there, what are the consequences of that? It means that we're going to have an increase in focal length of your eye. So if you look at the diagram, there are your two diagrams. In a normal eye, the light rays would come in. Once again, they would fall within the retina. But now, there's an eye with long-sightedness, hypermetropia. The light rays come in, and because the eyeball is short, it means it's going to increase the focal length of the eye. And as it does this, it prevents the light rays from falling directly onto the retina. They've got a greater distance, the light rays have got a greater distance to travel. So the image, instead of forming on the retina, the image does not form on the retina, but it forms behind the retina. And because it has formed behind the retina, it means that all the images that are near are going to appear very blurry. They're going to be blurred. So you cannot see any near objects. There's no problem with looking at those objects at a distance because they'll probably cover the required amount of focal length. But any object that is close by will be formed behind the retina and it will appear blurry. How then are we going to treat long-sightedness? Right? If you suffer from hypermetropia, you are going to wear spectacles that have got convex lenses. Right? If you look at the diagram at the bottom, these are convex lenses. lenses that bulge out. Remember, the light rays are coming in, so the lens needs to bulge out and meet these light rays. And when you have your convex lens, it is able to bend the light before it enters the eyes. And as it bends the eyes, it allows the rays to converge. What does converge mean? The light rays will connect, or they will link up, or they will merge. And where they're going to merge? At the retina, where a clear image is going to be formed. So you have corrected that situation where before any object that was close by was going to be formed behind the retina in long-sightedness. Now we've got spectacles that have got a convex lens, and therefore it will converge the light rays so that they form at the retina. Also, if you're not going to use, or if you're not going to have your eye defect corrected by the use of convex lenses, you can go for what we call refractive laser surgery, which is used to correct again the curvature of your cornea. Just as a study tip, and this is something that I personally even find myself using in my teaching, where I make summaries, and it enables me and helps me to navigate through sections of work. And a mind map you should be able to put it in a format that you understand, as long as you do not leave out the essential details. So in this particular case, you're going to see that there is a mind map of short-sightedness, the next one will be on long-sightedness, and then lastly on how we correct the eye defects. And when you do your mind map, as we've done here, it should be very easy for you to navigate, and you should make sense. So if we look at our particular example here, we have myopia, which is the central topic. And from there on, we say, well, what does it mean when someone is myopic? It means that you're unable to focus on a distant object. And then from knowing what it means, we say, what is it caused by? Either of several things, as we discuss later on. The cornea is too curved, the eyeball is too long, which will affect, remember, the elasticity of the lens. And what does that end up in? It will result in all your distant objects being blurry, right? You can't see them as clear as they should be. And we're going to see the next slide coming up that we've done the same thing for long-sightedness. So in your time, as you go through your work, maybe it could be one of those skills that you might try and implement to help you, to assist you as you build this record of work throughout the year. With long-sightedness, hypermetropia, where when we talk about long-sightedness, what are we talking about? We're talking about light rays being focused behind the retina. And what is it caused by? Either the eyeball is too small, or the cornea is not curved enough, and therefore it means that the lens is going to be not thick enough, not flat, as we said, it's going to be slightly loose, and therefore it affects how an image is going to be formed, and therefore the light rays are going to form behind the retina for any object that is close by. And how does this happen? For distant objects, we do not have a problem seeing them, but anything that is close by, it will appear very, very blurry. How do we correct this? Two types of defects. For short-sightedness, we know we're going to wear our spectacles, glasses that have got what type of lens? A concave lens. What is it going to do? It is going to cause your light rays to diverge before they enter the eye. Or what is long-sightedness going to be corrected by? It is going to be corrected by also glasses, spectacles that have got what type of lens? They've got a convex type of lens, which is going to allow the light rays to converge, to come together, to connect, to link up, to merge as they enter the eye, and the image forms on the retina for all the objects that are close by. Or you can wear contact lenses that do the same thing, or you can go for laser surgery, as we saw. So this is just one of those things you can do. I mean, we all have different tips that we can use to remember the information, but I just find that summarizing in the form of mind maps always helps when it comes to studying. The third type of eye defect is that of astigmatism. And when we talk about astigmatism, we say that this is a defect that is caused by an uneven or irregularly shaped curvature on the surface of the lens or the cornea. Remember, the cornea, the lens, two important parts that are going to allow light rays to go in. So what actually happens, or what we're talking about, is that it's an imperfection of the curvature in your eyes. Either the cornea is curved in differently, or the lens is also curved in differently in one particular direction. So, as we're going to see, what is the effect of this? If you look at the top diagram here, this is what we'd expect to see light rays come in. The cornea and the lens are in perfect position, so the light rays go and form and fall on the retina, and we get a clear image. However, with astigmatism, we are saying that the cornea or the lens is going to be curved in differently, and therefore the light rays are going to come in and they're going to fall on 2 points on the retina instead of one. And because they're falling on 2 or more points in the retina, it means that your image is going to be blurred. Once again, you do not see a very clear image. You're going to see multiple hazy kind of objects. That's how your objects will appear. So from getting a distinct image to getting something that is a bit blurry in this particular aspect. And what could be the cause of astigmatism? It could be hereditary, or your cornea could be scarred by injury for whatever reason, maybe through contact sport or through a bash, but the cornea is scarred by injury and therefore it moves out of focus a bit, or it's just the gradual thinning of the cornea that would happen over time. And as we said, because your astigmatism is being caused by one of 2 things, either the front surface of the eye being curved indifferently by the cornea or by the lens, we tend to find that there are 2 types of astigmatism. The first one is astigmatism that is caused by that cornea that is bent in one direction more, and we call it corneal astigmatism. So ideally, if we look here, for normal vision, the cornea is normally shaped like a soccer ball, I would say. However, it's spherical. Soccer ball is spherical. However, when you suffer from astigmatism from the cornea is going to be oblong. It is shaped like a rugby ball. And that has an effect in where your image is going to be projected. The light rays are going to fall, as we said, in 2 places and not one. So once again, look at the top diagram here. On the left hand side in green is a normal eye. Our light rays are coming in, and there's a cornea that is a perfect cornea, there's a perfect lens, and then the image is formed and goes and forms on the retina. But now when we have astigmatism, corneal astigmatism, the cornea is going to be a bit oblong, so it is going to be like a rugby ball, and the light rays come in, and because it is not in its spherical shape which is expected, you're going to end up with light rays being projected in multiple places. So you have this image forming in various places on the retina. The second one is your astigmatism caused by your lens. And as we say, this is due to an irregularly shaped lens which is located behind the cornea. We know the lens is behind the cornea, but the problem with it is that it's going to also have an irregular shape. And because your lens has got an irregular shape, it's going to result in the difference in the curvature in the lens as well. So the person is also going to see some objects as being blurred. So there's a healthy eye, the cornea is there, the lens is there. So if the light rays come in, there's going to be an uninterrupted projection of your light rays on the retina. Now if we look here, there is our lens, but our lens is bulgy if you compare the first one and the second one. So it's also irregularly curved. So the light rays are going to come in, and when the light rays come in, instead of just being projected in one single line to the retina, it's going to also be projected at various places. So the image is going to appear very blurry. Right. And if you look here, this is what someone with astigmatism would probably see. There's a truck, but for that person, if you do not have astigmatism, you'd see at night, well, there's a clear truck, there's the lights, but someone who's got astigmatism, this is what they would probably see. Everything would be blurry. Remember, they've got various projections of the image, so it's going to be a bit blurry in that. So the image, as we say, it is distorted. It does not matter at what distance, whether it's close by or at a further distance, the image is still going to be distorted. And normally people who have astigmatism, they suffer from constant headaches and fatigue of the eye, and in order for them to be able to actually try and see the object without seeing this haziness, the multiple images, they try and squint their eyes in such discomfort so as to just be able to give the right type of image. And how would you then treat this particular condition? If you are experiencing any of these, you should suspect that you've got astigmatism. And normally prescription lenses would just be fine so that you get much more comfortable vision. That is obviously if you do not have other underlying problems associated with the eye, such as maybe you're myopic or you suffer from hypermetropia. Then yes, you can just use prescription lenses to get that comfortable vision that you need. Or again, you can also go for refractive laser surgery in extreme cases. Right, the last one, the last eye defect, that is your cataracts. Cataracts, normally common in people as you get older. Cataracts are going to be something that you need to watch out for. And when we talk about cataracts, what are we talking about? Right, this is the blurring on the part of the normal part of the lens. Remember, your lens is normally clear to allow light to penetrate through. However, what then happens with cataracts is that the lens becomes cloudy. It forms a cloudy layer. And if the lens is cloudy, it means that it is going to affect how light or how much light is going to pass through the eye to go and fall on the retina. And obviously the amount of light that goes into the eye would determine the clarity of the image that is going to be formed. So if you look at our diagram that we have on top here, a normal lens is very clear. So light rays come in, they'll be able to go and form on the retina. However, when you have a cataract, that lens starts becoming cloudy. And because it becomes cloudy, it's going to change the density at which the light rays are going to come and penetrate into the eye. And as we've said, it will affect the formation of your image. And what could possibly cause the lens to become as it is, to become cloudy? It is because, remember, your lens is made up of normally water and proteins, and they believe that the proteins start clumping together, and as the proteins clump together, they obviously will start resulting in that cloudiness. And it may start as a little clump which can easily be removed, but it can actually get bigger and bigger, and it will eventually fill up the entire lens, and that is way problematic than if it's just a smaller area. Or another reason why you could have cataracts is that the lens will start changing color. It will change from being clear to a yellowish brown color. So as a result, it will add a brownish tint to itself. So one person, you would think that maybe you're wearing blue socks, in the meantime you're wearing purple socks, and only your friends can tell you that you're wearing purple socks because their lens is very clear. And on the other hand, because you're suffering from cataracts, you've got this yellow brownish color on the lens, you do not see that tint will obviously affect how you view your colors. And just as an aside, they've said that babies can develop cataracts if the mother gets German measles during pregnancy. And of course, if the developing baby, gets cataracts or contracts German measles from the mother, it will lead to blindness in the baby. And this is why we're immunized against German measles before we get pregnant as ladies. So how are we going to know that you've got cataracts? If you visit an optometrist, the optometrist will run a couple of tests. And the first one is what we call the vision test, right? Where I'm sure most of us have seen this chart before, where you sit there and the optometrist will ask you to read off letters, and we call it the 20/20 vision. You must get, out of those 20 letters there, you must get a certain score to say, well, you're not suffering from cataracts. So you read the letters from a distance, and this is to find out how sharp your vision is. So you first do it with the left eye, and then you also do it with the right eye after. Or they can also do an eye examination, where they're going to observe the change in the color of your lens. They're looking at how wide is your pupil dilating, or they're going to use what we call the standard test, tonometry. And this you've seen, you go in and the optometrist will shine the light into your eyes, and what they're actually doing is they're measuring the pressure of the fluid inside the eye to say, well, is there a possibility of your eye being clear, or do you possibly have or suffer from cataracts? In the event that you have cataracts, how then are we going to treat this? Right. Of course, if you have a cataract, it's a simple surgery that will last an hour and a half, or 2 hours at the most, where you're actually going to remove that lens that is affected. Because remember, we're saying with cataracts, it is the lens that's cloudy, it is the lens that's affected. So what they then do is they're going to surgically remove that lens, and they're going to replace it with an synthetic one, with an artificial lens. And what they do is they make a small cut through the eye, and they're going to use ultrasound suction. So they open up a cavity and they take out the affected lens that is cloudy, and then they will insert the new lens. They roll it in, and it will find its way and then go flat after it's been rolled in, and then they will then close that cut that they would have made, and you will not have cataracts anymore. And here's a picture that is showing us how they would surgically remove those cataracts. So they would have lifted your lens, the cloudy lens, the affected lens, and if you look at that color, you can see that it is not clear, but it is that milky white. So obviously that person, their vision was going to be affected. Right. I've been doing most of the talking, but remember, with each section we always need to say how much of it have we gained. So let's test our knowledge at this particular point. The first question. Question 1. Study the following diagrams which show visual defects and answer the questions that follow. So you have 4 diagrams that are given. Diagram A, diagram B, diagram C, and diagram D. And with each one of these, I mean, if this was me in an exam, what do? You look at it and you say, what is happening? You can tell that there's certain stories happening in each one. In A, there are light rays coming in, and you see something happening. There is an image, focal point, there's an image being formed, and already we know, right, the light rays come in, the retina is at the back, but the image is forming where? In front of the retina. So you know this could be which condition, right? Remember, when the image is formed in front of the retina. And B, the light rays come in and then they go, but where we're finding the point of focus? Behind the retina. And which condition is this? You know it, of course you do. And then in C, what has happened? The same. There's a lens that is there. That is, what is this type of lens? It is a concave lens that is going to do what? That is diverging the light rays and allowing them to fall within the retina. And then in D, what type of lens are we finding there? We're finding a convex lens that is allowing the light rays to also fall on the retina. So the question actually says, which diagram, A or B, illustrates A, short-sightedness, or B, long-sightedness? Think about it. Which diagram? Is it A or is it B? So let's look at short-sightedness. Which one illustrates short-sightedness? When you're short-sighted, what are you doing? See anything that's within 6 meters, that's nearby, but you cannot see anything that's further than 6 meters. Why? Because the image is going to be formed before the retina. And in long-sighted, you don't have a problem seeing anything at a distance, but anything that's close by is going to have the image being formed after the retina. So that kind of answers our question, isn't it? I hope you answered. Short-sighted would be diagram A, and long-sighted would be diagram B. Question 2. Now, this is also very nice to do because it gives you a summary of the section that we actually just did. So compare short-sightedness and long-sightedness by completing the table below. The key word there is what? Compare. When this does that, the other also does the opposite. That's what we mean by comparison. Always remember. Right. So let's start by looking at short-sightedness. First criteria, when you talk about it, let's look at the shape of the eyeball. Right. When you're short-sighted, we said, what is happening with short-sightedness? Something could happen to your eyeball, right? And what is that? The eyeball could be longer, right? So you've got a longer than usual eyeball. What about the focal point on the retina for nearby objects? Remember, short-sighted, you don't have a problem with anything close by, but what is the problem? Objects that are at a distance. So our focal point on the retina for nearby objects is going to be very clear. But what about what type of lens are we going to wear? We're going to wear the ones that allow light to go in, but that light bulges in, or bends inwards, which is your concave lens. And what type of surgery, and we're going to have the cornea being replaced or being made flatter so that it is less convex. What about long-sightedness? Right? What does the shape of our eyeball look like? The shape of our eyeball is going to be shorter than usual, if you remember. So because the shape of the eyeball is shorter than usual, what is that going to do for objects that are nearby? Those objects are going to fall behind the retina. And what type of lens would we put on to correct this? We're going to put on a convex lens. And what type of surgery are we going to need? We're going to make our lens more convex so as to allow the light to be able to converge in. I hope this serves as a good summary as well, that if you're given this type of question and you have to tabulate, you can actually compare the two. Remember that. Revision question 3. This is quite an interesting question because, well, I suppose you might find this question being given in the form of an essay, which would be good, and you'd need to explain in detail. So explain the nature and treatment of the following: astigmatism as well as cataracts. So we'll deal with each one separately. Let's start. What are the two things that you need to, we're explaining what? The nature as well as the treatment. So when you talk about, when you say the nature, we're saying what is it, right? Give a brief description of that particular condition. So the nature and treatment of astigmatism, right? There is an answer. Astigmatism, what is happening? Before we probably show the answer, you should have been able to say, we said we have two, the cornea and the lens being affected, but it has got an irregular shape or irregular curvature. What is the problem with having this irregular curvature? It means that your light rays, instead of falling on one particular point, they're going to be focused on two or more points on the retina. And because they're focused on two or more points on the retina, what is this going to do? It's going to cause multiple images. So your image is going to be blurry. You're not going to have a very clear image, only because the shape of the cornea or the lens was not as was expected. And how do you correct this? Right, the treatment, either you wear glasses or contact lenses, or you can have surgery. And remember, we said simple prescription glasses are fine on condition that you are not suffering from either long-sightedness or short-sightedness, because that kind of further complicates things. And then when you look at cataracts, we said cataracts, what is happening? Cataracts, it affects the lens. The lens, instead of being clear, it is going to be what? It's going to be cloudy. Why is it cloudy? Because the water and the protein that make up the lens start clumping together. When you clump something, they start coming together, they start hardening, and that is what forms that cloudy layer. And because the cloudy layer is there, what is it going to do? It's going to affect how much light is going to be allowed to penetrate into the eye and then form on the retina. So this is the condition which results in the clouding of the eye, which is the eye's lens actually, which is normally transparent. And the proteins may clump together, that's another mark, and they cloud that small area of the lens, and over time the cataract may become bigger. How do you control this? You can rectify this by having spectacles, which will improve your vision, but by eye surgery, which is an option. And what happens during the eye surgery, we remove the affected lens and replace it with a clear synthetic lens. So once again, This is a summary of the two, astigmatism and cataracts, done in a different format. And the last question, right? Very interesting question, I'd say, because it kind of makes us, think. It's one of those where you need to think through your answer. Why is it happening? So the question says, why would a person who has had no specific eye defects, in other words, they're not short-sighted, they're not long-sighted, why would this person probably need glasses with convex lenses after the age of 40? Right, so remember, convex lenses, when do we use convex lenses? We use them to treat which condition? Long-sightedness. And our convex lenses look like what? They're going to be bulging out because the light rays are going to come in, isn't it? So that's your convex lens. So why would we need this type of lens? Why would a person need this type of lenses after the age of 40? What do you think? Remember, I said to you, I remember giving my mom the newspaper and she'd always move it back. So what is happening? It means what? They're becoming long-sighted. Why? The lens could be becoming less elastic, isn't it? It's becoming loose. So, there's our answer. Where we're saying the lens loses its elasticity after the age of 40. Why? And what happens? It can't change, it can't effectively carry out its curvature, and therefore what's going to happen? The light rays from nearby objects can no longer be refracted enough to form a clear image on the retina. And therefore, what is happening, remember, when it's close by, the image is forming behind the retina, and to correct this, we're going to need the convex lenses. What are these convex lenses going to do? They're going to provide a focused image on the retina, because what? The convex lens allows the rays to bend and converge, link up and in the eye and fall on the retina. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been the 4 eye defects that we have been expected to cover, and I hope that I've managed to help you understand this particular section. And if you are presented with these questions in the form of diagrams in your exam or in the form of an essay, you are able to understand and what the question requires, and you're able to break the question down into different parts. If it's a diagram, we're looking at where the light ray is coming in, where is the image formed, what type of lens are we going to use to correct this. Or if it's things like astigmatism, what causes astigmatism? Also, you're looking at the shape of the curvature of your cornea or the curvature of your lens. If it's cataracts, know the procedure, the steps that are going to be found in when you carry out the surgery. What do we mean by cataracts? Are we able to identify an eye that has got cataracts? We should be. And later on, there is a worksheet that you're going to receive where it is going to present all the scenarios that have been discussed in this particular presentation. All the best. Good afternoon.